Hello and welcome to another one of your interviews on the Hormone Balance After 40 Summit. I am your host, Bridget Danner. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to our summit sponsors and our daily sponsors. And a reminder to you that you can own this summit, all the recordings and notes and a pile of bonuses. So check that out on this page. Check out that link and enjoy this interview. Dr. Ronda Nelson, welcome to the summit.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to chat with you.
Yeah, I have to share our story that I interviewed you for my podcast this summer. Someone had recommended you, I think someone in our community, and we did one. We hadn't covered everything, so we did a second. I thought, this stuff is gold. Like, should not be free. This stuff is so good. So I we went back and forth. I said, you know what, how can we put this into a product? Should we do a course together? What should we do? And so it was a bit of an inspiration for this whole event, which is pretty cool.
I know. I was so excited when you finally sent me an email and said, okay, I figured out how to do this. We're going to do this is what we're going to do for the event. And you're in there. I said, oh, it's perfect. This sounds perfect. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Really excited. Yeah. And if people want to go back and hear the podcast, those will be published in May 2017. So it's Women's Wellness Radio. Just look it up on your podcast player. You can go to our website. So we decided to redo, because those were audio only. So we decided to, since everybody else is on video, have you on video and just do a condensed version. Who knows what we'll talk about.
Yeah, well, it's always random, right? It's just however the wind blows, that's what we chat about.
Whatever comes up. But I would say our theme is effective natural alternatives to hormone replacement therapy, which is a bit of your specialty, would you say? Mm-hmm.
It's one of my passions is working with women and having them not have to rely on bioidentical hormones, because our bodies are meant to have enough of those hormones, whether it's preferred method or production of those hormones or an alternative method. And I'll talk about that. But our bodies are meant to have enough of them, and we shouldn't have to rely on bioidentical hormones just to make a symptom go away. Mm. The symptom is the indicator that something's not right. And we overlook that because there's this little panacea pill or cream that we can take, and voila, we're sleeping better and our moods are better. And I get that. I get it. But there's very, very, very few instances where women need them. Like, I would say less than 1% of the time.
Wow. Okay.
Most of the time it can be corrected by fixing what the underlying issue is, and then your body will do it all on its own, which is what I'd prefer.
Awesome. So I'll ask you a question that I think has been tossed around on this summit, which is, if we're in good health, is it possible to move through this entire transition with no symptoms, or are some inevitable?
For some women, some of the symptoms are inevitable. The question, I think, or the distinction is the severity.
Okay.
So, it's okay for temperature to fluctuate a little bit, where you just get a little warm and you're just like, oh, I'm just a little warmish. But not so much that you want to rip your clothes off in the middle of the street, or it's 35 degrees outside and women are walking and they have a tank top on and no jacket. You can pick a menopausal woman out in a crowd, a dysfunctional menopausal woman, because that's her deal. It's freezing outside and she's the only one who has a tank top on, because her hormones are not right. So we should be able to get through it fairly easily without too many symptoms. But if you know what's broken or what causes the symptoms, then it's really easy to go in and do more of a natural approach to try and resolve those symptoms rather than reaching for the hormones.
Okay. I'll ask you a follow-up question on that, because my talk is going to be about periods and how they go or can go awry. I wonder, in your opinion, is it possible they're going to taper off. Is it possible they'll be very normal and then just stop or taper off? Or will pretty much every woman have some heavy periods or some early periods, that kind of a thing?
That's a good question, because less than 10% of women, less than 10% will just go along. They're clipping along, having their period. Everything's perfect, right? They just have one last period. And that's it, less than 10%.
Okay.
But more than that, the other 90%, those are women that are going to skip a couple periods and then they'll start again. And then they'll skip a couple and then they'll start again. And what often happens is, as there's been a period of time that's gone by, like, they had a period in January and then have another one until May, the May period can often be a doozy. Because that uterine lining is blowing out. I mean, you're really just like cleaning out, and it can last for 2 weeks. It can be very, very heavy. So women may need to supplement with like iron and, just make sure that you're taking really good care of yourself, because your body's in the last stages. I always say it's the last stages of period death. You're in your final stages of death, except it's period death. And so it can get a little bit, uncomfortable, but that's the most common way, is that they'll stop and start. But in order for a woman to be in menopause, she's got to go officially, you go 12 months with no bleeding. So the rub is, you think you're done. And you've been 9 months, no period. You're like, yes, I'm on the home stretch. And then that sucker shows up one more time and you're like, oh, just shoot me now. Like, I don't want to start. Again. Here we go again. I have to count all over again. So you got to wait the 12 months, but it's not uncommon. For me, I'm in my about 15th month from when I started skipping periods. And I go about 4 months and then I have another one. I just finished one and I was bleeding for 2 weeks. And I, but it wasn't heavy. It wasn't clotty or heavy or anything. And I'm thinking, oh, geez. Now I've got to start counting again. But that's just what happens. It's just how it goes.
Okay. I think that's helpful for me. So only 10% probably. It's tough, too, because who do we see who's like this perfect picture of health with no toxic exposure and no stress? So it's hard to know. It's hard to find that ideal, but we just keep working towards it, right?
And, I think that's a really, really good point, Bridget, because if we look at like women who went through menopause 100, 200, 500, 1,000 years ago, their levels of stress were completely different than ours are now. And stress is the number one thing that will undermine and create a disastrous transition between your reproductive years into menopause. Stress is the number one disruptor. Absolutely. And so the more unable or unwilling we've been to take care of our own stress levels and support what I call not so much the adrenal glands, but the HP axis, which is that communication between the brain and the adrenal glands, that gets messed up. And when that communication gets messed up, then the ovaries are subsequently compromised. And that's where we see the dysfunction when we go into menopause. So you have to fix the stress issue first. And that connection or communication between the brain and the adrenals / the adrenals, you've got to fix that first. The best thing you can do for a reproductive woman, I think, for a woman in her reproductive years, is support her adrenal glands. Because if they're good during like that 40s, right, in that period of time where she's in her 40s, moving kind of late 40s into her 50s when she's going to start into the menopausal transition, if her adrenal glands and her stress handling capacity is good, she will make the transition so much easier. And the hot flashes and the, memory issues and the vaginal dryness and all the things that we see go along with menopause, so much of that will be completely minimized because her adrenal glands were intact.
So you're a nutritionist, is that what I say? Dietitian? Okay. And so you do a lot with food, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And one thing I read, I just learned this yesterday, I thought this was so interesting, that is, as our ovaries age and we're not making eggs, there's another layer of the ovaries, inner layer, that makes androstenedione, like a androgen, that we can convert into estrogen in our fat. But it's said that if we have insulin resistance or like some, missing cofactors, nutritional factors, that we won't. So be curious, besides this adrenal factor, what do you think is most important nutrition-wise for women at this age?
I think that the most important thing they can do is women need, the endocrine system runs on fats and trace minerals. So think of trace minerals. The exception to the trace mineral rule is zinc. The endocrine system needs zinc as well. So that conversion of the androstenedione into estrogen, and actually it's estrone in menopausal years. So we go from E2, estradiol, di meaning 2, so estradiol, into E1 or estrone, or 1, O-N-E at the end. And when we move from that at E2 to E1, what happens in the ovary is a little bit of that is still converted, that andro, into estrogen, but most of the backup happens in the adrenal glands. So we still have the backup production of the hormones, especially the E1. So we have to support them nutritionally. So I always say fats, lots of saturated fats. Don't, obviously we want to stay away from the trans and the polys and those things. But like avocado is a monounsaturated fat, and it's a really healthy, good fat. But the saturated fats are king of the hill. So the more saturated fats and a good trace mineral supplement. I use one that I love. It's called Immuplex. It's from Standard Process. But Immuplex is a great one. And it's obviously for the immune system, but it has all those nutrients in it that women need to help support endocrine function as well, because your immune system is regulated by your endocrine system.
Ah, okay.
See?
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's a parallel nutrient. So if you're going to feed the immune system, you're basically feeding the endocrine system. So those would be the nutrients, like supplementally, food-wise, as much organic produce, because where you're going to get those minerals is in the nuts, the seeds, the fruits, and the veggies. You also get a lot of minerals from like grass-fed meat, because what are those grass-fed cows eating? Grass. And that grass is a plant, and the plants have a ton of good, vital nutrients and trace minerals in them. So, the healthier your diet, and I never put anyone in a box and say, oh, you're bad if you can't get, the top quality foods. Like if you're not eating grass-fed beef, oh no. Just do what you can afford, right?
Yeah.
Do what your budget will allow. And it's better than nothing. But as far as the trace minerals go, always try and get them from organic sources, because the soil in an organic crop is going to have a better likelihood of having those minerals more richly abundant and available in the soil. So the plant will have them, as compared to a non-organic plant where they're just putting junk on the soil. You're not going to get the trace minerals. So in that regard, organic nuts, organic seeds, and really organic fruits and veggies, you'll have a better chance of getting the minerals.
That's a really good point. Yeah, sometimes you buy the produce, at Safeway or whatever, it doesn't even look good. There's no color.
Exactly.
It's like it's been in a closet.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this E2 estradiol is the one that we have more in our reproductive years, and then E1 estrone starts to be produced more in our later years. And I know in our last talk you said the receptors of the body and the brain and the body, they're having to switch to a new type. Maybe I'm oversimplifying of estrogen, and that's an adjustment period. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that adjustment period is what gives us so much grief. It's that adjustment. So when you're in your reproductive years, I'll use my hands. Let me see if I can make sure. Okay, you can see me. So if during your reproductive years, when you're going to ovulate, E2 estradiol goes up like this, really sharp surge, and you ovulate at the top, and then the E2 drops, and at the time that it's dropping, progesterone is coming up. So you have this low progesterone and E2 surge, and as this is dropping, this one's coming up. So we have a lot of activity that's happening right here in the middle, and this is E2, and this is progesterone. So when a woman goes and gets closer and closer to menopause, that E2 surge isn't as high, because the viability of the follicle is less, right? It's just not as strong. It's like, I'm not as robust, and I don't have as much energy in my 50s as I did in my 20s, because I don't want to have a whole bunch of kids running around my house. I loved it when I was in my 20s, right? But now I'm over it. So, those eggs are like, they're kind of over. They're over the process. They instead of having a robust E2 surge, what we end up getting is this. And so the estradiol, that all the receptors in the body, especially the brain, the labia, the vaginal tissue, all those receptors, they now have less estrogen. And that's the normal part of moving into menopause. So now instead of having a nice surge like this, we end up with this kind of like, it goes up and it kind of flatlines, and then progesterone kind of comes up and it goes, everything just, aww. And it happens over time. This dropping of these hormones can start to happen in your mid-30s. And so as they get lower and lower and lower, the longer the process, the easier the adjustment is on the body. But for some women, it happens, they'll have really good cycles, and then all of a sudden they miss a cycle, boom. And those you don't have any E2 now, and your poor brain, you can't remember, and your libido's gone, and you're crying all the time. You're like, what is wrong with me? Something is seriously wrong. And it's just because your receptors are starving for E2. But after a while, when they don't get it, and here's E1 over here. E1 is the menopausal hormone. It's kind of having to take center stage. So just think of like a transition of acts. Act 1 goes off stage, and there's that period of time where the stage has to be all reorganized and the new backdrop and everything has to get set up. That just takes time. And then E1 can get on the stage and the body goes, oh, okay, I'm good now. But it's that transition between those two hormones that can be tough, especially, and I see in my clinic that women that will complain more of like brain fog, brain fatigue, low libido, they're tired, vaginal dryness is a constant complaint, and then they're tired, and their hormones just don't feel right. Women know when our hormones are wrong, and it's not a fun feeling. So again, I go back to those adrenal glands and I go, let's start there. Let's start there, because the adrenal glands, as this E2 is starting to decline because the follicle just can't produce as much, what happens is the adrenal glands are over here picking up the slack.
Hopefully.
So hopefully, if they're working, but they're supposed to be your backup gland. So think of the adrenal glands. You've got 2 ovaries. How many adrenal glands do you have? 2. So they're kind of the backup system. So when these guys when the ovaries start to drop out, the adrenals are supposed to come in and kind of pick up the slack, just at a much lower level, because obviously your adrenals are not ovulating, but they're just picking up the slack with a different hormone.
Well, let's start there then. Like, we talked about foods that are supportive of the endocrine system. What other supports do you like for the adrenals?
So my favorite adrenal support is an herb called ashwagandha. And let me explain how that works. So the buzzword is this whole concept of adrenal fatigue, right? We talk about, I think I have adrenal fatigue because I'm tired all the time and I sleep all night and I wake up in the morning and I don't feel any better than I did the night before I went to sleep. Okay, I got that. But the problem may not be the adrenal glands. The problem might be that you've lost the ability to communicate. The brain and the adrenal glands have lost their communication. It's like I turn the radio on and I just have static. I'm not getting a good signal. So the pituitary gland is a little gland in the brain, and it's like right here about if you went straight down the middle of your head and straight this way, where these 2 lines intersect is where the pituitary is. It's right in the middle of the brain. And that pituitary gland is what basically communicates the body to the adrenal glands, whether you're under stress or not. So in a normal world, we're supposed to get chased by a bear, right? We get chased by the bear. The bear's coming, and I go into that sympathetic response, which is your nervous system goes on high alert, and it's that fight or flight. And I take off and I play dead or whatever it is I'm going to do that my brain instinctively tells me to do. And the bear goes away. And then what do we girls do? We cry. That's what we do, is we burst into tears and we tell everybody about how bad I almost died from the bear. And we really didn't, but we like to say that we did. But anyway, so we get in that stress response and then it's over and then everything calms down. That's how it's supposed to be. Stress happens and then it goes away, and it happens and then it goes away. But how do we live? Most of us live where we get up in the morning and the pedal to the metal and you go all day long, and we don't stop. And so your pituitary goes, geez, this person, she just is under stress all the time. So instead of turning the switch on that tells the adrenal glands to produce those hormones to help me run away from the bear, the pituitary is getting the message that there's a bear all the time, that I'm always being chased by the bear because the stress is always there. It's kids and it's money and it's marriage and it's just life, and I don't feel good and I'm eating bad food, and so my blood sugar's just whatever the stressor is. And so pretty soon the gland in the brain just goes, well, you're stressed all the time, so I'm just going to turn the switch on. I'm going to put duct tape over it and a big sign across the top that says, do not turn the switch off. So now the brain is constantly telling those adrenal glands, go, 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 go. They're stressed, they're stressed, they're stressed, they're stressed. So we start to lose that ability to have that normal kind of ebb and flow on and off. And the way menopausal women experience this is insomnia. It's one of the number one ways that this is, you notice that there's a problem in the communication between the brain and the adrenals. The switch just got put on. So ashwagandha, the herb, is what starts to turn the switch off. And it takes the tape off the wall, the sign, starts to pull the tape off the switch, and your brain, to try and protect you, as soon as you start pulling the duct tape off the switch and you turn the switch off with the ashwagandha over time, takes a few weeks or a month or so, then your brain goes, no, she's always under stress. No, do not touch the switch. But your body's learning a new way to behave in the world. And it's learning how to adapt to stress better. So the things that used to stress you out, now you go, oh, yeah, that really irritates me. I don't like it when you do that. And that's all you get. Like, that's just all you respond, instead of, how we like to fly off, especially when you're menopausal, right? So that's how the ashwagandha works. So it's why my favorite, because it works to calm that response so that the body goes, oh, yeah, it's okay. It's no big deal.
That's great.
So it's not necessarily feeding the adrenal glands, but it's helping that communication. And I think probably 80% of women have a disordered signaling rather than an actual problem with their adrenal glands. There's nothing wrong with the adrenal gland. It's doing fine. It's the signal that's the problem. And so that's why I love ashwagandha.
That was super helpful, because I think many people have heard about the fight or flight, but they don't totally understand, how it's working in the body, and why am I not sleeping, and how did this go awry? I think that's a great point. I was just at the Oregon coast this weekend, it's so relaxing. It gives you another sense of perspective, right? To just be lounging around at the beach. It's the cold beach, just like your beach in Washington.
Yeah, I know.
But it just made me think about, there's this paleo re-emergence now, right? And it's the food, which is good, but it's the working out, which can be too much. But it's when is the downtime that, our ancestors had? Not that they didn't work hard to survive, but there was so much time where there wasn't a lot of stimulation. And we don't have that now with the society we've created.
And our nervous systems don't have a time to reset, because what are we doing before we go to bed even? We're on our cell phone. We've got that blue light exposure, which is turning the brain on. So it's telling the brain that we're under stress, or it's daylight. Like, why are you in bed? We got to wake up. It's something's going on. We have to, and then we wonder why we don't sleep. So part of working through insomnia for menopausal age women is support the adrenal glands, get the switch turned off, right? Get that. And then to your point, make sure that you build in time to just rest, to go hang out with people. Don't have the TV going when you're eating dinner. Sit and converse. And if you're in a relationship where you don't converse with yourself in your head. You got to do something to create that sense of peace. Put classical music on, even Pandora. Just type in dinner time music and you'll get a genre, and they'll put all that together. Do anything that you can to try and create that sense of it doesn't have to be all the time, but sometimes it's so important. It's just so important during the transition.
Yeah, another one of our speakers said, 20 minutes a day of just checked out, tuned out, to let the limbic system calm down. And I like that advice too. I like your dinner time music. I think that's a cute bit of advice.
Even taking a nap. I mean, there's been plenty of studies that show that just taking a nap in the middle of the afternoon, provided that you're not sleepy because your blood sugar's low, but just taking that time out, it's the same thing. It's letting your nervous system kind of reset and reboot so that you can finish out the rest of your day. There are many cultures that do that, where they'll rest in the middle of the day. And in America, we think, what are you talking about? I'm not productive if I'm sleeping. Well, actually, you are going to be more productive when you sleep. Just take a few minutes and take a little nap. 20
Yeah.
minutes will do you a world of good. Yeah.
Yeah, I even say just like lay down for 10 minutes after
Yeah.
lunch. You don't have to fall asleep, but just your adrenals also support your blood pressure and keeping you upright. And that's work too. So just lay
Yeah.
down for 10. It's so refreshing. So nice.
Yeah.
So Rhonda, I know another thing that we talked about on the last time around is I think you said that if our adrenals are in good shape going into menopause, that our weight will be more stable. Do you want to tell us
Yeah.
about that?
So when your blood sugar starts to drop, your adrenal glands are the ones that get the first signal. So when glucose, so let's just be sure we're talking about the same thing. So when I say blood sugar or glucose, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, so in your blood, you've got this sugar, and the sugar is needed because it feeds your brain. So what do we complain about in menopausal women? Forgetfulness, memory, loss of clarity, focus, you can't remember anything. So we want to make sure that there's always a very, very perfect amount of glucose available in the bloodstream all the time. So the adrenal glands, I'll use my hand again, the adrenal glands, when the blood sugar's cruising along and it's stable, so you eat a really good breakfast and you've got like eggs and sausage and, a little bit of avocado and some greens or something, or a bowl of fruit, or like berries are my favorite. So you eat a good breakfast. You're cruising along. It's starting to get to lunchtime, and you're running out of fuel in your bloodstream, which is glucose. It's your fuel, your gas in your gas tank, and it starts to drop. As soon as the adrenal glands get the signal that it's dropping, the adrenal glands, their job is to prop that up so that you don't go way down and go into a coma. Right? That's a diabetic coma from really low blood sugar. Now that's the extreme, but your body doesn't want that to happen, and your brain needs the fuel. So what it does is it goes, okay, I'm going to drop. This starts to drop. The adrenal glands are going to prop that up, but the adrenal glands send a signal to the liver and to the pancreas, and they're telling them, hey, I need some glucose in here like right now. And those the liver and the pancreas then release their respective sugar and hormones, and that helps to stabilize your blood sugar if you're going a long period without eating. So if you don't eat, then it's putting stress on those two, the gland of the pancreas and the organ of the liver. So that's why I say we want to make sure blood sugar stays really stable. So eat every 3 to 4 hours, a protein, a fat, and a fruit or a veggie. When your blood sugar stays stable, your weight will stay stable because you're not getting those huge surges of glucose that end up getting stored as fat. If you can keep your blood sugar really stable throughout the day, when your body needs fuel, it'll go after the fat stores. When it needs extra fuel, when you work out, that's why you can work out, lose weight, and never have low blood sugar. Because the body, when you're expending extra calories, so we're going for a walk, or I'm going to go walk a hill, or I'm going to go get on the treadmill for a little while, nothing excessive, but when we're exercising and your blood sugar is stable, the body goes, we need some extra fuel. I know, let's go get some of that fat on her butt. And it'll go chew that up, and it'll go get that leg fat, and it'll go get that belly fat. And that's how we keep our weight good during menopause. But often menopausal women will get that extra 5 to 10 pounds that'll collect. And where does it collect? We all know the center of the belly. Women will say, I've got this 5 or 10 pounds I just can't get off. I don't know why. And the reason is because when your adrenal glands, here we are, full circle back, when those adrenal glands, about 5 years or so before you are going to go into menopause, and your brain knows how many follicles are left, we just don't get privy to that information. But your brain knows, it does a system check, and it goes, okay, we got X number of years left. We have only X number of follicles left, but she's got to have some hormones to get her through the rest of their life, or she's going to bite everyone's head off forever. And we don't want her to be miserable. So we need to make sure that the backup system is in place for when those ovaries start to tone down their production. So the brain does the system check, like a scan, scans it, and it comes back and goes, oh no, her adrenal glands, that communication or the glands, something is so not right there. We cannot trust that those adrenal glands are going to help us make those hormones, like we mentioned earlier. So what the body does is it puts on an extra layer or fat padding to produce those hormones because the adrenal glands can't. And so the best thing you can do for a premenopausal woman is support her adrenal glands. And then I tell them, look, you either need to take these herbs or you're going to gain 5 or 10 pounds when you go into menopause. Your choice. Like, I'm out. You choose whatever you want to choose. I'm good. But I'm telling you, if you support your adrenal glands now, you'll avoid that 5 to 10 pound weight gain because that's just your body's backup hormone replacement system. That's just what your body's doing. It's putting the fat cells on and going, well, fat cells make hormones. They make estrogen. So if the adrenal glands can't do it, we can't trust them because they're not healthy, then we're going to have to make sure, and we're going to put the fat on. And the bad news is it doesn't come off.
Oh, I think you said this in our podcast. You're like, you can't get it off once it's on.
So I'm telling you, ladies, like the best thing you can do is get that communication working between your brain and your adrenal glands and support those two little things so that your ovaries can drop off and those adrenal glands can pick up the slack. Your belly will thank you, and so will the mirror. You will not have a few extra pounds.
I'm so glad we talked about that because I did some research yesterday, and I was looking at a book, kind of an older book about like herbs for menopause or something. And she said that, it's kind of normal and natural to gain that weight at menopause because it makes hormones. And I was like, I guess so, but that's like not the answer anyone wants to hear. And we know that there are women who are slim, who are, healthy and older. So do we have to put on these 5 or 10 pounds? I like your answer.
No. I say no, but I think we just have to prepare for it a little bit better. And I would bet you, if you know someone who's thinner, slim, well into menopause, and they don't have that extra weight gain, I bet if you ask them that they probably had lifestyle habits that were like what we're talking about. They didn't check their cell phone before bed. They're not watching TV or on their computer before they go to bed, and they're enjoying a meal with music and, talking and having community and sharing life with other people. They probably had a really different lifestyle than most of us do. And it's easier said than done. I mean, it's a challenge for me. I really have to work at it because I'm a worker. I'm an go person. So to slow me down is hard, but I don't want the weight gain. So I'm always on top of my adrenal glands.
That's
so
great.
Call it a selfish motivation. Maybe it's a vain motivation. I don't know, but it works for me.
Well, yeah, if it's going to motivate you, and people don't want to have extra weight at any age. I think what you're describing could even happen much younger. Because we know, women in their 30s, they're so stressed out and blown out. They're not making enough hormones either. So we could start putting on weight for that reason too. So really interesting. Maybe the last thing I want to talk about, which shockingly we haven't talked about much on this summit, is more about the hot flashes and the night sweats. Because I know you've got some solutions for that.
Yes. Okay. So I'll give you my story so you'll know. So, this is what I do. I do this all the time with menopausal women. This is what I do in my clinic, like reproductive, anything having to do with the hormone is my specialty. So whether it's thyroid or whatever the hormone is, I own that. I love that. I know it. So as most of you know, we're often like better with other people than we are with ourselves, right? So what we have is we end up being like, I'm not dealing with myself. I'm not taking as good a care of myself as I should be. So sure enough, I start about 15 months ago having a hot flash. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. I'm hating this. Covers on, covers off, night sweats, covers on, covers off, hot during the day. And if I would think about anything stressful, I would instantly go into a hot flash. So I'm trying everything in my toolbox, like everything I know, and it works kind of, sort of, and not really, but sort of, and it's sort of making it better. And I'm taking better care of my adrenal glands because I really am a better doctor than I am a patient. I mean, honestly, because I'm taking care of everybody else. And sometimes, the cobbler's daughter is the one who doesn't get the shoes, right? So it's really true. And I think patients need to know that. Like, we're on the same journey that you all are on. We're on the same journey. We stumble and struggle just like everybody else does. So finally, after thinking and thinking, and I'm like, I'm not getting these under control. The one herb, and I'm embarrassed to admit, but I did. It's true. I totally forgot about it, and it's my herb of choice for hot flashes and night sweats, and that is tribulus. And tribulus, we always think of tribulus as being a male herb, but tribulus and or wild yam, those two will get those hot flashes 90% of the time or more. So I stopped counting one night with night sweats. I stopped counting at 22, and it was only 3 in the morning.
Ugh.
So you can see how little sleep I got. I mean, that's like one every 15 minutes or so. And it was horrible. I just was sleep deprived horribly, and I didn't feel good, and I was cranky and all that. And when I put the tribulus in, within 48 hours, the hot flashes are gone. And what the tribulus is doing is it's helping to tell those receptors. Remember, we talked about the receptors, right? It's telling those receptors that it's okay to make that transition between E2 and E1.
Oh, interesting.
And
Okay.
the wild yam is doing the same thing. It's starting to kind of upregulate the body's perception of its hormone status. So I don't need to have temperature dysregulation. We know that those temperature dysregulations come from deep inside the brain, and that's a neurological, we can't go there, but they come from deep inside the brain, and the tribulus helps to modulate that in the brain. So I have no hot flashes. I have no night sweats. I sleep every single night. And I'll tell you, the herb that I use also for sleep, if I need it, is kava. Kava will put a menopausal woman who's not having night sweats, like, you got to resolve that first. But then sometimes your brain just gets real overactive and you're thinking about a lot of stuff. Kava will put you in a nice sound sleep. So those are my two, like, I would say 3 probably. Tribulus and wild yam for hot flashes, and then kava for sleep, and then ashwagandha for the adrenals. Those would probably be my 4 like key things. And then eat right, of course. Make sure your diet's good.
And then, Rhonda, does the wild yam have the same mechanism as the tribulus?
It's much the same. Yeah, it's much the same. And you pair those two together. Some women only need one. Like for me, I only need the tribulus. I have some women who will only need the wild yam. And I use the herbs that I get are from MediHerb. I think you and I have talked about that before. And so MediHerb makes the highest, purest quality herbs in the world. And I'm not going to compromise my clinical results by using something that's not, I want the quality. So that's what I use. So I can't vouch for a tribulus. If you go down to your health food store and buy a bottle of tribulus and it doesn't make your hot flashes go away, I'm out. Like
That's
I'm
the wrong one. Yeah.
It just doesn't have the right phytochemicals, but the ones from MediHerb do. So I have zero I can't even remember the last time I had a hot flash or night sweat.
I'm glad we talked a bit about the wild yam, because I think that's one you can get over the counter, and there's like this debate, well, how could it make you make estrogen? And we're not saying it makes you make estrogen.
Right.
It's a regulator. So I think that's an important differentiation. And the quality question is really important too, because I think people will hear a little something, and then go to, even like Costco has stuff, and like, Walgreens or trade, and I'm always like, oh, don't buy stuff
don't
from
do
there.
that.
Please don't.
No.
And then you think it doesn't work, or you keep buying it even though it doesn't work, and it's just a waste of money. Yeah.
Right. Think about this. There's no plant in nature that makes a hormone. No plants make hormones. So if you don't think about like, oh, wild yam is a hormone. It's not a hormone. What it provides the body with, when you take a good quality wild yam, what it provides the body with are all the precursors for the body to pick and choose what it wants to do to produce a hormone, or to make a hormone, or synthesize a hormone. So the wild yam contains like phytochemicals. They're called like steroid-like compounds, but their diastegenin is one of them, and it's just a phytochemical. Wow. But the body's then able to pick and choose. It's kind of like going to hometown buffet. I don't recommend hometown buffet. But it's kind of like going there, right? You have all this food to choose from, and you just choose what your palate needs for that day. And so your body can use trace minerals from the food that you eat, and fats from the food that you eat, and proteins from the grass-fed beef or chicken or fish or whatever you're eating. And it takes all of those things plus the phytochemicals in the wild yam complex or the tribulus or whatever. It takes all of those things and it puts it all together, and that's what makes your hormones work. It's not a bioidentical hormone. A bioidentical hormone it's like a Band-Aid. It's like the check engine light is on in your dash of your car, and if you put a piece of duct tape over it, you go, I don't see it. Do you see it? It's gone. A bioidentical hormone is like that. It just suppresses a symptom, but it doesn't fix the problem. So I'd rather, like, let's change diet, and let's look at maybe some herbs that we can bring in, and let's look at rest, keeping that stress response down. Those are the ways that you transition and get through menopause without the dangers of the bioidentical hormones. And as a kind of a last thing I want to throw in, and this is probably a subject for another day, but we have to consider the fact that all the hormones that we take, those bioidentical hormones, they come out the skin. So anyone that we're in physical contact with is getting some of our hormones. So when women are in bed with their men, and this is not having sex, but this is just curling up next to each other and snuggling up and getting all warm and cozy when the sheets are cold, when you sweat and your arm is up next to your guy, or you're spooning, you're wrapped around each other from the back, and you're skin to skin, or your legs are skin to skin, wherever that skin is contacting and you're sweating, you're giving your progesterone to your man. And his progesterone will start to elevate, and he will then have hormone dysregulations. That is the one secret, or the thing that no one's talking about, that I think we all need to be aware of. That's the biggest danger with the bioidentical hormones. It's called passive transfer. And that's another huge reason why I don't want my husband turning into a girl, thank you very much. I think I'll keep my hormones on the inside, meaning I'm going to fix them the right way without using those bioidenticals.
Yeah. I want to say a couple things to kind of wrap it up, and then we'll talk about your resources. One is, we'll have some people on this summit who do use bioidentical hormones. Some use them often, some use them occasionally. Some will use them none. And I know sometimes people will listen to you and say, can't you just tell me one thing? But let's face it, there are different opinions out there, and it's up to you to choose your own path. You are your own doctor, your own best doctor. So yeah, this is education. This isn't like a treatment. So we want you to choose. This was great information. The other thing I wanted to share was, I was thinking of a client I saw the other day, and she's very educated, like many of our listeners. And, she's trying to make some improvements in her diet and, get to sleep on time. She's doing a lot of things right, but kind of not getting results. And I looked over her diet and I thought, well, you know what? There's just some depth missing to it. And it's kind of like some of the things you said, like organic nuts, just a little grass-fed meat if you can't afford a lot, get the grass-fed butter, some key herbs, just some key new habits. So if you're trying and you feel like, well, I've tried everything, I would, really listen to some of this advice, because sometimes it's just, getting those trace minerals. There's just a little bit of like depth of nutrition missing that once you find it, things could really shift, right?
And it is, and to your point, my intention would never be to, make it like you have to do it this way and this is the only way. This is my recommended way. But it's right. There are listeners that are going to say, hey, look, I've been on bioidentical hormones for a long time. Well, that doesn't mean that you can't integrate some of the organic nuts and organic, stay on your bioidentical hormones if that's what you feel is right for you, but integrate some of these other things, because it might be a segue or a bridge to help you get off of them at some point. Yeah. Right. So it might just be something that's going to help to upregulate. You don't have to stop them cold turkey, but you might just add in some of the other, options, herbs or nutrients or sleep or whatever, and that might help you be able to get off of them at some point, because you'll start feeling better all by yourself, like supporting the adrenal glands or whatever it is. So yeah, I agree with you. There are lots of different opinions and lots of different ways to do it. This is just the way that I do it. And if it resonates, awesome. And if it doesn't, then that's okay too, but at least you have another perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, we love it. So Dr. Nelson, tell us more about your website and your resources. I don't know if you have any free gift you want to share with the audience from your website.
I do. So
Okay.
I do. You'll see that there's a free gift that's available, and it's actually a download from me. I'm going to do kind of my own another separate type of informational podcast for you. And then I've got some handouts and resources, many of the same ones that I use with my own patients. But you can check out my resources at my website, which is restorationhealth.net. So restorationhealth.net. You can go there and ask me a question. There's a button right on the homepage that says Ask Ronda. And you can click on that button and that question comes right to me. So I will answer your question as best as I can. If I don't get back to you, it's not because I didn't want to. It's because sometimes every once in a while I'll lose one. It'll drop down in my inbox. So re-email me if you don't hear back from me. But you can always check. I have lots of great recipes and resources and podcasts and information, blog, et cetera, on the website. So you feel free to go browse around, but that's how you contact me.
And you do some education for practitioners too.
Yeah, I do.
Let's talk a bit about that.
I teach about 30 weekends, 25 to 30 weekends a year. I'm on the road, and I teach continuing education seminars for medical professionals, other healthcare professionals, nurses, chiropractors, acupuncturists, pharmacists, dentists, people who are interested in incorporating more of a functional approach. And I teach those seminars for these doctors, and I teach them how to do what I do, or how to, the practical part of integrating functional medicine into their practice so that they can offer better, more sound nutritional options for their patient, dietary options. Because we all know how frustrating it is when you go to the doctor, your medical doctor, and it's what I call a conventional, straight line conventional doctor. And he says, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need an antidepressant. Or you're fine, but you feel horrible. There's nothing more disempowering than being told that. So what I do is I teach doctors how to listen to their patient. And even when all the tests look normal, if the patient says, I'm telling you, I'm not okay, that they have to just dig a little deeper. So that's what I do. That's one of my favorite things is to teach at the continuing education seminar. So I really do love it.
And can people find out about that at the same website?
So, but these are for practitioners only. Yeah.
How do you find out about them?
You can call my office and find out if I'm going to be in your area. And sometime for some areas, they'll allow the general public into the seminar, especially if it's a topic that's of interest to you. So, like I teach on the gut microbiome and about female reproduction and menopause and thyroid and male hormones and all that stuff. So yeah, if you just call my office or just send me an email and say, are you going to be in the blank area anytime soon? We'll get back to you.
Have to stalk you a little bit.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, because there's a number of practitioners and health coaches listening, so I want to make sure they can find out about that. Well, thank you for your third interview with us on this topic. And again, if you want to hear the other two where we get into some other things that we didn't have time for because there's 2 podcast interviews. So if you want to go back and hear that, I think we talk a little bit more about the thyroid, the bladder, some other things. So that's womenswellnessradio.com or Women's Wellness Radio on your podcast player, or you can go over to bridgetdanner.com to find out more about that. So thanks again, Dr.
Oh, you're
Nelson.
welcome. It's so nice to be with you. I always enjoy chatting with you. We could go on for hours, I think. Yeah.
I know. Someday I'll just do like a marathon.
Yeah, exactly.
8-hour webinar. See if people can handle it. All right. Well, thanks again for your time.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.